Hi guys, Irina here and welcome back to my channel where I review everything tech. It's been about a month since I got my OnePlus 9 Pro, the phone that I was really looking forward to and couldn't wait to get my hands on. If you have seen my unboxing video, you already know that I got my OnePlus 9 Pro in pine green color. I love that it has this matte finish. This pine green color itself is so beautiful. It looks like a mixture of blue and green, so sometimes it looks bluish and at some angles it looks green. My favorite alert slider is here and I can't stress enough how convenient it is. Then we have a power button and on the other side there is a volume button. And when it comes to build materials, we have a metal frame and a glass back on the OnePlus 9 Pro. Let's talk about the display of this phone. We have a 6.7-inch AMOLED display on the OnePlus 9 Pro. When it comes to brightness, this phone is pretty good. I rarely care about the amount of nits on the specs sheet since I do care way more about the visual experience because at the end of the day, it's what you see with your eyes and not necessarily the specs that could make all the difference. And this phone is not as bright as the iPhone 12 Pro Max, but the OnePlus 9 Pro seems noticeably brighter to me than the Galaxy S21 Ultra. And as you can see, my light meter seems to agree with me. So the brightness of this display feels more than enough for me. You have plenty of display features on this phone. Some of them we've already seen on the previous OnePlus models, like the screen calibration, nothing new here. You could choose between vivid, natural, and advanced. Then we have the option of QHD+ resolution and an option to go up to 120Hz refresh rate. But speaking of the new features, we get Hyper Touch that improves the touch response and the frame rate stability to reduce in-game imaging delays, and from my experience, I honestly haven't noticed any dramatic difference since the gaming has been absolutely seamless on this phone. I haven't experienced any freezes or delays, but I'll talk about gaming and gaming features in more detail later in this video. And speaking of the other new display features, we get the motion graphic smoothing, which can raise the frame rate of a video, making it look smoother. And it actually does make a difference. The videos look noticeably smoother, but keep in mind that it doesn't make the original video file smoother. So if you export these videos to a computer or share them on Instagram, they won't look that smooth. So that's why I actually prefer to keep this feature disabled, so that I could see how my videos actually look. And also, we get the ultra-high video resolution feature, which I absolutely love. As you can see at the moment from all of the apps I have on my phone, it's only supported on Instagram, but it really works. The same videos on my OnePlus 9 Pro look crisper than on the other devices. So yeah, this feature adds some extra video clarity, which is pretty cool, and I'd like to see more apps supported by this feature. Overall, the whole viewing experience with this display has been incredible. I don't have any complaints here. The display is very sharp, all the icons look flawless and pictures look really crisp, and 120Hz refresh rate makes all the scrolling and swiping much smoother on this phone. So yeah, can't complain here. The display in the OnePlus 9 Pro is pretty good. Next, let's talk about the battery. We have 4500 mAh on the OnePlus 9 Pro. In the box with this phone, we get a 65-watt charger, and in my unboxing video, I've already done a charging test with this charger. It took just 32 minutes to fully charge this phone from 0 to 100%, and as I previously told you guys, I'm not even surprised about the charging speed of the OnePlus 9 Pro, since OnePlus phones have always stood out when it comes to charging technology. But I also got this OnePlus Warp Charge 50 wireless charger that supports 50-watt wireless charging. So let's do another charging test right now. In 30 minutes we get 63%, 91% after 45 minutes of wireless charging, it's already 99%. and it's fully charged in 51 minutes. That's really impressive for wireless charging. If you ask me, most of the time I still use traditional wire charging since it's faster, but this wireless charger is a game changer. So if you're a fan of wireless charging, this thing is definitely worth buying. I've been using this charger a lot during this past month, and so far I've absolutely enjoyed it. It has a fan on the bottom, so basically when you put your phone on the charger, the fan turns on. The sound is a little bit similar to a laptop's fan, but it's not loud at all. And when you take your phone off the charger, the fan stops working right away. And speaking of charging, let's not forget that the OnePlus 9 Pro supports reverse wireless charging, so you can charge other devices with this phone. Now let's talk about the battery life, and while I cannot say that this phone is one of the best in terms of battery life, this phone is still able to get me through the day, but most likely you will still have to charge your phone every single day, which I would say is getting less common these days since there are more and more smartphones that have really impressive battery lives where you don't even have to charge your phone daily. Of course, you could save some battery by switching to 60Hz refresh rate and Full HD Plus resolution instead of Quad HD Plus, and also by disabling some of the display features like ultra high video resolution that could drain the battery life faster, so you'll just have to find balance in terms of what is more important to you. Next, let's take a look at the camera setup and talk about the camera capabilities of this phone. We have a quad camera on the OnePlus 9 Pro, including a telephoto camera and an ultra-wide camera. But when it comes to the monochrome camera, keep in mind that it only exists to assist the main camera in producing monochrome images, so I would say there's not much practical use in this camera. And when it comes to photos and videos from the OnePlus 9 Pro, I have a dedicated camera comparison video on my channel. Check it out if you haven't already. And going through the comments, I've noticed that many people pick up on that slight bluish or sometimes purple tint in some pictures from the OnePlus 9 Pro. And yes, I can see that too, and you can love it or hate it. It always comes down to personal preferences. But when it comes to the overall picture quality and taking into account things like the exposure and the HDR performance, I would say the camera on this phone is actually not bad. Speaking of the videos from the OnePlus 9 Pro, the stabilization is great, except for the 120 frames per second videos. Sometimes the videos also have this slight purple or bluish tint, but I wouldn't say it's really noticeable. You can only see that when you compare the videos side by side, so I don't really see a big problem here. And speaking of the camera features, aside from the usual time-lapse, panorama, slow motion, video, photo, portrait, nightscape, and pro, we also get this tilt shift mode that gives you this miniature city effect, which is pretty cool. It's not really useful, but it's creative and I like it. Also, we have the macro mode on this phone, and speaking of the nightscape mode, I like that you get a few options here, like the tripod mode, where you could get a longer shutter speed and longer processing for even more detailed night shots. And you also get the starburst option if you take a night photo with a night source. Now let's talk about biometrics and security features. We have a face unlock on this phone, which is not the safest option, but it's super fast. It works 10 times out of 10, so the face unlock on this phone feels really convenient. And another unlocking option is the in-display fingerprint sensor. Honestly, I got used to the new location of the fingerprint sensor pretty quickly. Yes, it's significantly lower on the OnePlus 9 Pro, and it's not as intuitive as the one on its predecessor. Sometimes I have to reposition the phone in my hand to reach the fingerprint sensor, but overall it works great. It's really accurate and fast. However, I wish it was located higher. Moving on to the speakers, we have dual stereo speakers on the OnePlus 9 Pro. We have the in-display speaker at the top and at the bottom, and I must say the sound quality is actually really good. The sound is not just loud, but it's also clear, so yes, the speakers are really decent on the OnePlus 9 Pro. I can't complain here. Now let's talk a bit about gaming. As I previously mentioned, the gaming experience on the OnePlus 9 Pro has been practically seamless for me. No freezes, no delays, which is not surprising since this phone runs on Snapdragon 888 and we also get 12GB of RAM on this phone. Speaking of gaming, the only thing I've noticed is that the phone gets noticeably warmer, which is pretty common, but there were never any extreme temperatures. Of course, we have the Pro Gaming mode on this phone that blocks notifications and calls, and it also boosts your game by restricting the background apps. It's important to mention that the OnePlus 9 Pro is IP68 certified, which means this phone is completely sealed from solids and it's waterproof, with immersion over long periods of time. Speaking of other features, I'm happy to see my favorite quick gestures here. Sometimes they're really helpful. I think this is the easiest way to turn on the flashlight, especially in the dark. Oxygen OS is my favorite, especially when it comes to customization. I absolutely love that you could remove the names of the apps on the OnePlus phones. Also, the new always-on display styles are pretty cool, so there's a lot to love about this phone, even when it comes to little details. We get 256GB of unexpandable storage on this phone, and seems like in the US there is no 128GB option with 8GB of RAM. So these were my thoughts on the OnePlus 9 Pro. It's $1,069 in the US, and for this amount of money you get a solid phone with great specs and features. Not gonna lie, I wish this phone would cost less and was more affordable, but I guess the market will ultimately decide whether or not the OnePlus got it right with the price. At the end of the day, this phone has a lot of pros and a few cons, but I have to admit that my overall experience with this phone has been quite enjoyable. Really curious to hear your thoughts on this phone. Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching and see you in the next video.